thank you for joining us this morning. One of the things we thought to be really good as we start to come out of lockdown is really sharing knowledge from different countries and learning about the experiences that other people are finding. So we've got 4 great speakers joining us today, 5 including Michael, who I've no doubt will be obviously asking questions as we go as well from around Europe. So I'm going to ask Michael to introduce our guest today from Europe, and then we'll go into Q&A. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everybody. As I've spoken before, I'm the national delegate for the UK and Ireland for EHMA, the European Hotel Managers Association. The association has over 400 members that stretch from the UK, from London in the west, all the way to the east to Russia. 400 hoteliers, all operating 4- or 5-star hotels in major cities as well as smaller cities. So a whole range and gamut of hoteliers, and really a vast power bank of knowledge. And given that I think hospitality is one of those wonderful industries where we're not afraid to share, even amongst our most ardent competitors, our information, our knowledge, and we're such a supportive industry, which surely can't be said for many others out there who are very protective. But I think in hospitality, we will help a competitor. We'll still cut their throat for a piece of business, but on the whole, we're nice people, and we help people where we can. And I think that is the spirit of the European Hotel Managers Association. This very large cohort of hoteliers that stretch right across Europe. Now, obviously, Brexit has not been good for hospitality, and I think we'd all agree that we'd rather that Brexit didn't happen, and especially for colleagues in Scotland. And but we feel the same across the whole of the UK. But I felt that over these past months, when Brexit has got bigger and bigger, and is about to sort of cut us off, theoretically, from Europe, then in hospitality, we can retain those links with the European Hotel Managers Association, because that support, that linkage, that amicale, that whatever you want to call it, it cannot be broken. In fact, I think it's going to get stronger. So I like to say, as Brexit is pulling us apart from Europe, then EHMA is one of those key organizations that for hospitality can bring us together. So in that spirit, I'm delighted that colleagues from EHMA have joined the call today, and I would like to thank them because they're all busy a bit ahead of us, opening and running their hotels, and they it must be a very tough time. So thank you. And I'd like to introduce Ezio Indiani, who is EHMA's president. Give us a wave.
Hello.
There we are. There's Ezio. Ezio is EHMA's president, and he was made president last year. Ezio is based in Milan and is the general manager of the beautiful Principe di Savoia hotel, which is the Dorchester's hotel in Milano.
Yeah.
And so welcome, Ezio.
Thank you very much, Michael.
And then
thank you for the invitation.
Pleasure. And then Panos Almyrantis is the national delegate from Greece. There's Panos. Panos is in Crete, running the beautiful Daios Cove hotel in Crete, and desperate for all of us Brits, one of his key markets, to be allowed to come there. So Panos, welcome. Then we move to the Netherlands to Stefan Stokemans, the general manager of the, I have to get this right, the Hust de Dune, which is, I hope I said that right, Stefan, which is the most beautiful hotel. And I discovered it at an EHMA meeting only a couple of years ago. And I had no idea that crossing the channel to the Netherlands and just outside of Amsterdam is this most unbelievable beach resort with beaches that are full of sand and go on forever. And the Hustadun Hotel sits right on that and is a most fantastic destination, so close to the UK. And then last but not least, representing really a whole swathe of the Nordic and sort of Eastern countries is Juha Mahonen, Juha up there. Now Juha is the national delegate for Finland, and his Haiko Resort Hotel is in Finland. But Juha also represents Denmark, Estonia, Iceland, Lithuania, Norway, and Russia. So that's one hell of a chunk of very interesting areas of the world that perhaps we don't, know too much about. So, so gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining this and being prepared to answer a few questions from Chris to guide us and lead us. Chris.
That's very kind, Michael. Thanks for your kind introduction. Welcome, gentlemen. I think we want to explore particularly the challenges that you're finding, both through the crisis and actually coming out, probably more importantly, how you plan to come out of this difficult period. Ezio, shall we start with you? Because obviously Milan's been particularly right in the core of it, hasn't it? Core of the storm. I mean, how has this crisis period been for you?
Well, yeah, as you rightly said, Milan was the first city in the western part of the world to be affected really by the coronavirus. So we went through the whole process and it seems that we are getting out now. Just as an example, yesterday we had only in Lombardy, which is the area of Milan, only one dead and only 26 new contagious people. So that's definitely a very good news, because if we go back 3-4 months, we were talking about 900, 1,000 dead every day. So it seems that all the precautions that we put in place, all the preventive things to do, the mask, the social distancing, and so on, has really paid us back, and it seems we are getting out of it. Milan and Lombardy and all Italy has suffered enormously. We are talking about a loss of 17% of our business, and still today, in the luxury market in particular, we are suffering enormously, and many hotels in the luxury market are still not open because, again, we are not allowed in Europe to welcome the American, welcome the Russian, the Chinese, the Indian, the Brazilian, Saudi Arabia, and some other part of the Middle Eastern countries. So obviously this makes us impossible to open the hotel, because the business on the book that we were planning to open on July 1st, and we had decided this, let's say, a month before, at the beginning of June. But then when we approached the date of July the 1st, we noticed that in all our hotel, in the company as well, we were running, or we were on the books, the 3, 4, 5%, no more than that. And with all the borders closed, with the international borders closed, it did make no sense to open. That's why we are still closed. And many colleagues in Milan and in Rome and in Florence and in Venice are still closed because we lack all the market that I said before that are our feeder market. In terms of moving around Italy, the thing is quite normal now. I would say we still have to wear masks in Lombardy, but not in the rest of Italy. So the situation has improved, even though there is a social distancing. The beaches are open, the bar and restaurant are open. But when we talk about restaurant and bar in particular in the major city, Milan, Rome, Venice, Florence, Bologna, and so on, with the crisis, all the major institutions, the bank, the finance association, insurance companies, major companies around Italy have decided to put their people on smart working. So actually they are not coming into the office anymore. That means that all the hundreds and hundreds of restaurants that were working at lunchtime with, you know, the workers of this institution, they're basically all closed, and the great majority of them will not reopen. Because again, after the pandemic period, let's talk about September, let's say, when the offices are due to reopen, but many people will still work from home. And that means, you know, that the restaurants that were running at 100, 150 covers at lunchtime, they will probably run now with 20, 30, 40, 50, if they will be lucky. So that means that with the rent they have to pay, the staff that they have to pay, the cost to operate the restaurant makes it unbearable to open it. That's why there is a lot of restaurants that have already decided that they will not reopen. The way we see the crisis hitting us, and I talk about the major cities and the major resort areas, in Italy is that it will take at least a couple of years to go back to, if nothing else happens, to prior to the COVID crisis, let's say. Already this year, as I said, you know, we talk about a 70% loss. And next year, we talking to the colleague in Milan, Rome, Venice, the major cities, we talk about a forecast which is 50% less than 2019, the 2019 actual results. And 2022, we hope to get back, you know, at 70, 80% of what we got in 2019, and hopefully in 2023, regain the market share that we have lost. But for a couple of years, it's going to be tough. And a lot of hotels minor hotels in particular, that were in a debt situation, most probably will not be able to reopen. The government, I must say, has been generous in terms that have introduced a lot of helps to support the activities, the hospitality industry. But definitely the crisis is so big and so deep that even the help that we have received from the government is not good enough really to keep alive many of our hotels, restaurants, agencies, congress organizer, MICE organizer in general. And also the resort. I was talking to the colleague on Lake Como, so Villa d'Este, Mandarin, and so on. But they all run, you know, they are busy on the Saturday night because, you know, there are local people going there. They arrive on Saturday morning and they leave on Sunday evening, but they take one night. For the rest of the week, they run at 25% occupancy. You know, without American, without Australian, without Russian, without Indian, Brazilian, and so on, is going to be difficult. And in addition to this, I must say we experience also a great drop also of European travelers, because it's true that the borders are open, but still many people are afraid to move around. So they don't take the plane. The plane that arrived, despite the fact that out of 100 planes, we got probably now only 10 arriving, and those, most of them are not full. And so people come with the cars, but these people don't go to the city, they go to the resort, to the seaside. But even in the seaside, that at the moment, they just reopened now mid-June, but they run at 50% of their regular capacity at the same period. And also July and August, they don't foresee to be fully booked, no? Which is definitely very, very bad, I must say. No? The situation is gloomy. It's gloomy and we don't see anything good. And what hits us the most, what is really terrible for us, is the social distancing, because this means no exhibition, no fairs, no congresses, no company meetings, no sport events that would bring a lot of people. And this kills hotel like mine, for instance, in which we had, you know, capacity up to 500 people for lunch, dinner, congresses, meeting, and so on. So all these hotels, you know, like mine, are suffering even more than the other that are really geared only on individual clients. No? So this is a little bit the situation in Milan and in Italy.
Thank you, Ezio. That's very, very succinct. Thank you. Panos, can I bring you in here to talk about the situation? Must be very different in Crete, but also equally as concerning, I guess.
Oh, well, the president has underlined pretty much several of our challenges as well. It is not, well, the thing is that the whole wide world found out everything about how Greece is sailing. over the last decade, which was on very rough seas already. So bear in mind that we entered within a crisis in 2010, and right at the start of some positive change, we got the COVID. So after 10 years of suffering, we got that. Indeed, it's different. I am in an area, the island of Crete, which is it's an island, but it practically has 700,000 inhabitants, so it's not a small island, it's rather big. It is indeed very difficult for us. I think Michael has, in his introduction, has put it very, very bluntly. There are specific markets that we need in Crete and in Greece. The UK market is #1 in Greece. As you know very well, currently we cannot have any flights from the United Kingdom, which is killing us. Officially, the country is reopening its doors today for tourism. Thank you very much. Obviously, there is some sort of a concern in the local communities and in the country in general, because we will be having definitely several incoming COVID incidents, especially in a place like Crete with 700,000 inhabitants that is COVID-free for the last 2 months, which is a great accomplishment. Create some talk, but at the end of the day, tourism is important. Bear in mind that the share of tourism in Greece's GDP is 20%. The share of tourism in Crete's GDP is 50%, with the remaining 50% in agriculture. And this was a year that the oil harvesting was hit severely. So Crete has lost 80%, 80, of its GDP. Subsequently, several challenges in the future when it comes to unemployment and so on. And I strongly believe that this is the start. We're not even in the middle. We will definitely be seeing the effects of COVID in the next couple of years. I think the president has put it very correctly. Whilst we're happy that we are reopening, there are so many questions that cannot be answered. We are doing our homework. We are working on protocols. We are working on procedures and policies. But there is, you know, it's a very deep sea, and we have absolutely no idea of its depth.
So it seems to be like a 2-year, both of you seem to believe it's going to be a 2-year recovery. Is that fair?
I strongly believe, and you know, studies have exhibited, and especially our conversations with banks, because let's face it, banks are the you know, the heart and soul of every economy, and the vast majority of hotels and resorts have their mortgages, loans, and so on. So banks foresee that the numbers of 2019, which was a relatively good year for Greece, will come back in 2024. Unfortunately, the summer of 2020 will have, especially for the resorts, a drop by about 80%, 80, in the revenues, subsequently in the profitability. And although that the Greek government took some measurements, financial measurements and so on, and have given some financial assistance, still we're talking about a country that is at the 10th year of crisis, marked over the last 4 months by the biggest crisis after the Second World War. And let us not forget that in the Second World War, there was at least some time to prepare to go on the battlefield. When it comes to COVID, we don't know what's coming tomorrow. What ends our day today, and we know, let's say, where we're walking and how we're going to walk on a specific path, is changed tomorrow morning with something new.
Oh, that's very fair. Juan, can I bring you in here and talk about the Nordics and the Eastern countries? Hello.
Hello. So, well, as Michael told, I'm covering 8 countries here, so it's a bit difficult to give an absolute truth or image about because they are all very different from each other. But starting from my native Finland, the local Hotel and Restaurant Association just yesterday released a study among hoteliers, and yes, we have been opening our hotels during the June, as we are kind of corona-free, but still 15% of the those who answered are in threat of bankruptcy, and 75% of the hoteliers intend to adapt in the new normal. I don't know where in limbo the remaining 10% are then there. But having discussed with one large chain owner in Lapland, that's the north of Finland, and they have been doing the past few years a fantastic business. Now it's as there is no demand, and the airlift is non-existing, so they forecast that only year 2025 will be the same as 2019. So it's a quite sad situation up there. We still have the restrictions in Finland. For example, the restaurants, we have a 75% amount of seats available can be used, and that creates we started from 50%, half of the seats in restaurants, and that creates one problem in getting even the hotel guests a seat for them in the restaurant. But if that's from Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland have been doing very well, and their governments have been very generous, covering up to 80% of the labor cost. So heavy subsidies over there. While Sweden has been in a completely different path. I don't have any first-hand information, as EHMA doesn't have currently members there. But as you probably know, it's internationally known that restaurants and hotels have been opened, all the businesses have been open, and now it really looks like they have emerging crisis there in the north, at least. So I can't say anything, but they didn't suffer also because so much because they didn't close their outlets. Well, Finland, we did not get any subsidies. That's thanks to our left green government. It's kind of chacun pour soi, as they say in French, so save yourself. The landlords have been more generous. There has been negotiation about the rentals and so on, but the feeling in general is not very optimistic. The Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they are in their own bubble, opening eventually all the hotels and restaurants today. But there's a very weak domestic demand because Estonia has 1.3 million inhabitants, and that's like one part of the bigger city. So there's not demands. They are desperately waiting for the Finns and Scandinavians to come over and spend their money there. Russia, it's completely a different story. I just received a message from one of our members from St. Petersburg, and they never put any restrictions for hotels to operate, but restaurants were closed there. And so, for example, the 5-star hotels, they have been only doing the room service. A kind of a costly maneuver, that as well. Smaller hotels and even some chain hotels have been closed. And for example, in St. Petersburg, the 5-star or upscale hotels, the occupancies are between 5 and 10%. Because there is no international traveling whatsoever. All the guests are from Russia. And Moscow, they are now releasing everything, all the restrictions, apart from the restaurants. And in St. Petersburg, they are available. They can keep the terraces in operation, but the restaurants not yet. So that's shortly the 8 countries. In general, still we share the same fear. Though among those hotels who have the conference business, what will happen after the summer and the tourist season, because you know, we all learn to use these Teams and Zooms and so on. And what if the companies, they don't come back to have their meetings and conferences? That's the general fear. What will be the new normal?
That's very good. Thank you very much. I think that's the concern, the question we're all having discussions on. Stefan, can I bring in your perspective from Amsterdam?
Yes, so of course the Dutch like to do things differently, which meant that we went into an intelligent lockdown, as the government called it, with a huge self-responsibility of the citizens. Nevertheless, the restaurants and bars were forced to close down on March 15th. And for the hotels, it was a kind of, let's say, well, independent decision on whether you like to be open or not. But if the government also announced that you have to stay at home, there was no travel going on. And of course, also the surrounding countries were not traveling either, which meant that most of the hotels, especially in Amsterdam, closed down. And a few of them reopened a month ago because the regulations were moving a bit more, that there was more opportunities. For the hotels, firstly you could give room service, and then they opened it up that you could only serve your hotel guests in a restaurant, lunch or dinner, and then it opened up about a month ago to also not hotel residents. That led to a situation that approximately 80% of the hotels in Amsterdam and in Holland closed down. And today they announced the newest regulations that we only should obey 5 feet distancing in any kind of business you are in. And of course, you still have to do the triage, checking people, all those kind of things. So that resulted in a kind of challenging situation that Amsterdam, yes, is reopening slowly now. However, those who opened a month ago are still not above 10% occupancy. They're crying out loud, which we can imagine. Another, let's say, challenging observation is that where most of the city councils are doing everything to help the hoteliers, the new mayor of Amsterdam and the new city council is determined to basically shut down tourism for the upcoming years, which means they are now discussing new regulations that whenever there's a new outbreak or a pandemic thing going on, that local government has the opportunity to close down occupancy of hotels. So there's a big thing going on in Amsterdam with city council on how they should move on in tourism. The fact that they are so low in occupancy is, of course, that they are depending, well, for about 90% on international business. When you look just outside Amsterdam, then you see that most of the hotels who are, let's say, in the forest area or as we are in the beach, are basically doing really well. Our hotel never closed down. We had a few long-term guests in the hotel. And as we could be open, we remained open. Since half of May, things were getting better. We ended up in June with about 45% of occupancy. And in fact, due to the more domestic markets and also the German market, which are able to travel, in July and August, we will move probably into, let's say, a normal summertime. And the only challenge hospitality is now facing is basically the 5 feet distancing in your restaurants, in the entire operations you have. But compared, of course, to other colleagues around Europe, we are, on, let's say, on the lucky side. But we're Dutch, so we're hard to keep into what you call it, into a fence. And we have a lot of challenges with guests not obeying the rule. And it's also a bit weird if the government announces that certain type of professions are allowed back again since July 1st. So imagine we are a hotel and catering industry. We are getting very creative with 5 feet distancing on tables, in meeting rooms and all those kind of things. But if you are a prostitute, which is a legal profession in Holland, you're allowed to welcome guests again. And obviously, you can't do that with 5 feet distancing on your profession. So with that, you have some weird discussions going on in Holland. So basically, we're good here on the beach in Amsterdam, but in September, we drop back to 30% as we are a MICE-operated hotel. Holland as a destination is a MICE destination as well. And we expect that it will get bloody around September, October, where we have a lot of hotels going bankrupt. As there's no sign, things are coming back. So yes, we have an upturn outside Amsterdam due to the summer season coming up, but in fourth quarter, even more challenging times are getting ahead.
And what's been over the last few months? Obviously, you've been trading okay, but what's been your biggest challenge, Stefan? What's been the hardest piece for you?
Being open, I guess the most challenging thing is keeping up with the ever-changing new regulations. And of course, it was things loosening up. But like if you have a fully booked hotel, we have 500 guests in the hotel, which we are, of course, logistically fine with. But now to the new regulations with a feet and a half, you have very practical things like running your elevators. It were 10, now only 2 people are allowed and even feel comfortable by going in an elevator. So your entire logistical site had to be redesigned. We have luckily that we have many meeting rooms available. So from a breakfast point of view, we could do a lot of things with those distancing. And it's also rethinking your entire food and beverage operation, your housekeeping operation on touch points to have a loss, which is a bit weird, to have as less as possible touch points for your guests. A lot of cleaning issues coming up. But at the end, we said regarding the rules that, okay, we are in an intelligent lockdown. So we should also move over to intelligent hospitality. And we communicated a lot about with the guests, and we were also emphasizing on the fact that in the let's say temporary abnormal, I refuse the word new normal. It's temporary abnormal. That we are communicating that we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So we took also a lot of, let's say, responsibility back to the guests. Like, we will do our utmost to keep you safe, but please be aware that you take care of yourself and also to our staff.
You believe behaviors will change back again?
I'm sorry?
You believe behaviors will adjust back again?
I think that I think it will come back, but we're on the beach. We're in a lot of open areas, and I think we're pretty safe. But however, in high density situations and places, it's quite a challenge.
Thank you, Stefan. Ezio, if I can come back to you, because actually one of the themes that comes out of all this has been the cities are going to find it harder to recover than the rural areas or outside the cities. Is there anything you're doing in terms of changing services or adapting or bringing new things in? May I ask? You're on mute at the moment, Ezio.
Sorry, I had the microphone off. Yes, everything is changing. Obviously, we have redesigned our operating protocols. So from the arrival of the guest, the check-in, we check-in, the way we prepare the room, we sanitize the room, the way we operate in the restaurant, the salotto, and so. But one thing is very important in our company. We don't want, to look like some kind of an hospital or a clinic. So everything that we do differently is not really being seen by the guest. So for the guest is really, we have to comply with what the regulation and what the law says. So at the moment we have to, every employee facing the guest has to wear the mask. And obviously we have to do this. We hope that by the 1st of September, this rule will be removed and we will be able to operate without a mask. Also, the mask has to be of a specific kind of mask, with filters and so on. We hope that this will change. We have to do a lot of work to train our people, because one thing, we are very lucky in Dorchester Collection, because our company has guaranteed the 100% job to every employee throughout the whole length of the crisis. And in addition to this, we have also guaranteed the 100% of the gross salary to every employee. So this, you know, obviously it's quite a commitment towards our people, because we feel we have a strong team. And so it's easier for us to work with this motivated team to really review with them the new operating procedure, let's say, which we hope, as Stefan said before, will be only temporary, and looking forward to returning to at least 90% of the regular service as of the end of the autumn, at least. You know. Yes, a lot of things are changing. A lot of things will change again, and we are adapting to the new indication that the government and the sanitation office issues every fortnight. Every fortnight we have a new set of rules to follow, and we adapt to this. But the service is changing a lot. We have to review from the opening onwards. We have to plan also the takeaway service, because this is it's a big business taking place in Milan nowadays. So we are thinking about having special boxes, special luncheon or dinner to be taken away and to serve our client in their home, or deliver the food to their home. This is certainly something that we are envisaging. We try to have all product, you know, local product, ideally. This will be impossible to have 100% of local product, but we tend to, how would you say, to prefer, let's say, the local product in order to be, you know, also to get the local community to work and be closer to us. Yeah.
One question that's coming in from a couple of sources is about testing the temperatures of the guests. Are you doing that?
Now, this is not, you must do it, is compulsory in the restaurants, not in the hotel. In the hotel is not compulsory. But again, you as a client, when you come into the hotel, at the moment of the check-in, one hotel might ask to take the temperature, another hotel might not. It's not compulsory. But in the hotel, if you go to the restaurant, then in the restaurant you will be taking the temperature, yes. Not only, you will, at the moment, you will be taking the temperature, even in the hotel restaurants, and you have to take the name and the telephone number of the visiting guest that is maybe having lunch or dinner with you. We know the client, but if he comes with a person that is not resident, the law today asks you to have the name of the client that is with your resident guest, take the temperature and his phone number. And you have to keep trace of this for 14 days.
Thank you, Ezio. Panos, in Crete, what are you doing regarding temperatures?
Yeah, well, it's a very delicate issue, but what we've done is we will be doing testing with a non-invasive and touchless thermal imaging for temperature measurement. Don't want to do any sort of advertising here, but there's a company that we've identified that is called Mobotics, which specializes in that, apparently. So we've done some research, and we've identified that by placing 2 of those cameras at the arrival point of the resort, which is the, you know, where the security is done, and at the, what we call our belvedere, the arrival where the guests are treated, then that is very, it's going to be very effective for both our guests as well as the staff, because we are talking all the time about the guests, but we should not forget about the staff. And if you really ask me, I humbly believe that the staff has a higher risk simply because they go out in a place like Greece where very many people, especially couples, are in the same profession or in similar to tourism professions. Then it's not just Panos, but it's also Panos' spouse who is working in another hotel or in any sort of activity related to tourism. So we're rather exposed, and I think that this thermal imaging will do it. It really is a state-of-the-art method, and we avoid the very delicate GDPR issue that we all face over the last couple of years.
No, that's kind. Juan, can I ask your opinion out in the Nordics?
We are not doing that in Finland, and not to my knowledge in any other of my countries. Not overdoing it, maybe because the crisis has been, the COVID-19 hasn't been that tough over here. One thing that I would kind of join Panos is about the staff. It's very interesting to see that, no matter how much there has been talk about social distancing and how we guide our customers, but then on the back of the house, you will see, your employees, when they see.
So we lost you, Juan, for a second there. Sorry, we lost you, Juan. Stefan, can I bring you in at this point?
Yeah. So we're not obliged to temperature our guests. We are obliged to check them in either as a hotel guest or in a restaurant or going to a meeting with 5 questions. Like, have you had any kind of things like sneezing, all the kind of things?
Did you ask something more?
We lost your audio, Juan, so we moved on to Stefan.
So, and we have to ask those 5 questions on every check-in. And of course, most of the Dutch are now used to it. So they now approach you and say, yeah, I know the 5 questions and I can all answer them negative. And we just go on with our lives again. The nice thing is we organized trying to start up the meeting industry again, a kind of, let's say, post-COVID-19 conference. And like Panos was already saying, they use those high-tech cameras to temperature the guests when they check in. That seems to be helping, but it's not obliged. And when it comes to the questions, we now have several app initiatives that you can scan in at a QR code upon check-in, and you have to answer those questions, and you will get a message whether you are safe or not safe. So, but we do have facilities in the hotel. Whenever we have doubt about our guests, and of course also staff, like Panos mentioned, we have several kits available, to temperature both guests and staff right away.
You mentioned the meeting and events industry, which is obviously going to be one which is facing most pressure. How do you see that coming back, or how soon do you see that coming back?
Actually, we don't expect a business to come back on the earliest at the end of June 21. And we have a big debate going on now. And I'm also one of the strong voices in Holland on questioning the lack of, let's say, a kind of a railroad program on how to get back again. And we were quite surprised that the Dutch government, because officially July was only gatherings from 100 people. And then suddenly last week they said, well, you know what, you can forget 100, it's going so well with everything, it's now only 5 feet. So my advice to anyone going to governments is that they give a clear guidance on, let's say we do 100 1st of July, 500 August, 1,000 on September, because what we notice is there was clearly a lack of confidence with all the meeting planners. And as soon as they have some kind of confidence that, okay, if this will be the new regulation, and everyone understands when there will be a new breakout, that things will be closed. And I guess every hotelier will understand that he has to sign a COVID-19 clause. Okay, then we are getting back in business. And now, because there's no clarity and no trust in the market, the entire supply chain, so it's not only the hotels, but everyone is suffering. The airlines are suffering from the fact there is no trust in the market yet. And the soonest we expect is June 21.
Thank you. Before you leave, Ramesh has asked a question about services in restaurants. Is it just table service? Have you changed and adjusted your F&B services?
So in restaurants, we started out with all kind of indeed tables with the dishes on going to the tables of the guests, and then the guests, they should take their own food. But as things were loosening up, then we moved to a, let's say, a 50-50 system. We asked the guests whether they would allow us and feel comfortable whether we would serve the more or less traditional way. And of course, everyone is keeping a bit more distance than normal. And now basically we are back on the system how it used to be. Regarding to our breakfast, that's also perhaps a good thing to know. A few of our colleagues changed over to an entire, let's say, a la carte breakfast. And we moved over to a system which is partly, which means that each guest has that's a kind of a basic continental breakfast on his table. And for the more specific items, we created buffets, which are all with individually packed specific things like certain cheeses, certain meat cuts, all those kinds of things. And that's one of the, let's say, if there's a positive thing about Corona, for the impression of our guests, now running a 500, the most of it's now 350 people breakfast. With the new system, we get more and more compliments on the way we do things. So there are some opportunities which can make you gain, let's say, more appreciation from your guests.
Thank you, Stefan. Ezio, your views on this? You're on mute still, I'm afraid. Okay.
Sorry. Yes, we are in a similar situation. We, in terms of breakfast, we were very, very popular with the buffet, even though we haven't opened the hotel yet. So this is all the project that we have. If nothing changes, we will not serve the buffet anymore, but we will all have the breakfast a la carte. Also, for congresses and meetings or so, the coffee breaks, if they were having breakfast as well, it will all be a la carte. And for groups or so, obviously, it will be preset menus and so on. In banqueting, we have to reduce the capacity because in banqueting room where we had the capacity of, let's say, 500 people, now we go down more or less to 200. So that means a reduction of the capacity of the rooms by 60%. So obviously we hope that this social distancing of 1 meter will be removed, because as I said before, this is penalizing not only the hotel, but many, many other activities and the whole MICE market with agencies and so on. And in terms of menus, in order to comply with the law, we will have menus that we print every day, and then you give it to the client and it goes straight into the bin afterwards. So we will not use the curate menus on the iPhone or so, nor will we use the plastic menus, but it will all be daily made and daily destroyed. Really. And as I said, the menus will be reviewed as well in compliance with certain items will be removed from the menus.
Yeah. Has room service changed? Are you changing room service?
Room service, well, more or less is the service that will change. We will have everything in the restaurant as well. We'll go out for a la carte food, all with covered. They will all have the cloche. Every item will be covered. Same at the room service, we will ask the guest whether he prefers to have us to enter the room with the trolley and the waiter with mask and gloves and serve inside the room, or whether he prefers a normal standard. This is one, or otherwise we can leave the trolley outside of the room, and if he prefers, if he's afraid of this type of service, he can help himself, and we will give him the direct indication on how to open the table and how to operate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Jill, can I bring you in at this point? Jill McMillan? I mean, it's an interesting question you just posed in the chat. Do you want to ask it?
Okay. Yes. Well, hi, everyone. I'm a leadership development consultant and executive coach. So I'm working with a lot of leaders during this time. And I really, something that really strikes me on this call is the word suffering that has come up so much. And I really feel for you all, those in positions where you're having to really just deal with the day-to-day. And it's difficult to look ahead. And yet I am really curious. The question I asked, for those of you who haven't seen, is if the Harvard Business Review, as they often do, was to write an article, 10 years from now, looking back on this time and hailing the organizations across many industries that thrived post-COVID-19, what are the hidden opportunities that they might say these organizations created or took advantage of? I guess I'm curious, for those of you in the industry, what are you thinking in terms of innovating during this time, or taking advantage of, that would, in parallel to working with the day-to-day, start thinking ahead and you know, possibly even leading to new opportunities that don't even exist at the moment? Question.
Who would like to start that one? Ezio?
Yeah, well, as I said before, you know, one challenge that we have is definitely that of having a lot of people to work on remote, so to work from home. So a lot of people from sales, accounting, HR, and other office works, let's say. I believe that in the future, or we are working in the direction that at least 70% of them will work from home. So this will be already quite a big challenge and a big variation, you know, modification of what we are doing nowadays. Another thing is to really go outside with our food. So how do you say, the outsourcing the food, going out with our chef to cook at home, design menu that can be delivered at home, and you know, the waiters as well to go and service the client at home. These are certainly areas that we are evaluating. And in terms of banqueting as well, is basically to avoid all the buffet, because we don't see the buffet to come back in our organization, not for a foreseeable future at least, because I think that the hygiene and the protocol on sanification will not allow us to have the people to go at the buffet and with the cutlery themselves help them out. So this, we have to think a new way of feeding our people, and we are already working in this direction. So all the menus will change, all the buffet and cocktail parties will disappear. It will remain as an aperitif only.
Panos, can I bring you in?
Yes, sure. Fantastic question. Amazing question, really. And it's something that should be of prior importance to everyone's head. So let me try to approach it from the perspective of about 5 years ago, somebody asked me, what is my profession? What do I do? What's my job? And I replied to him, I remember, that I'm a risk manager in a company that offers curated travel experiences. So he looked at me, he said, I'm sorry, I don't get it, which you know, was expected since I gave this answer. And that was at that time my interpretation of the hotel general manager's role in a country that, as I said in the very beginning, was sailing on rough seas since the start of 2010. Now, most definitely, it's proving very hard to reopen, to run the show in the next months and probably in the next couple of years. But risk management has become now more than ever before part of our DNA. So I would say focusing on, let's say, different areas like have protocols in place, focus on the health, safety, review the financials, assess the impact, have contingency plans, optimize expenses wherever possible, implement practical management, and communicate is very, very, very important. Now, at the same time, I am honestly extremely surprised by how unprepared the two top world economies have been caught. And I'm talking about Europe and the United States. It's devastating to know and experience that we've made it to the moon in July 20, 1969, but had absolutely no plan whatsoever in case of a virus. And it is even more discouraging, in my opinion, to acknowledge nearly 5 months after its start that apart from the United States that has really lost it, it was mostly the developed countries and economies within Europe that had very high number of fatalities and incidents. And of course, the primary concern of everyone in government has been to avoid the collapse of their NHSs. And what's more frightening, I think, is that we are just at the beginning of this, because the financial side effects that would potentially create a further humanitarian crisis will be around for the next year. So I'm not sure that we have the right answer right now, as opposed to what will be listed in 10 years from now as opportunities, but we definitely learned how to be more transparent and realistic, to focus on core values, to make room for continuous feedback, to enable collaborations, to focus on everyday experiences, and I think to also strengthen the atmosphere of trust, and above all, demonstrate that we're a good company. If you demonstrate you're a good company within your organization as well as within the outdoor environment, I think is the right approach in order to overcome this crisis. After all, it's another crisis, and probably not the very last one, but one of very many that will follow.
Thank you, Panos. It's very interesting. Juan, can I ask your views? Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, wasn't it Winston Churchill who said that never let a good crisis go to waste? And I think that this is also an opportunity to streamline your organization, make them understand about the new normal, do things with the purchasing, explore new market places, new target audiences, and so on. So I see also the kind of the opportunity here in the middle of the great truth at the moment, the misery we are living in this moment. So I don't know about the 10 years ahead, but hopefully 6 months ahead, things will be different. At least you know, on the operation side of the hotels, we have all probably learned something new.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you. I think it will, if you look back 10 years ago, in 10 years from now, it will definitely be the great reset of industry. But on the other hand, I'm not so negative as a lot of people who are in the Dutch talk shows that tourism is dead, it won't come back again, blah, 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 blah. And I think that if one thing is proven, is that the influence on hospitality and hotel and catering industry on the well-being of the people. And they definitely miss our industry. And I think there's a big opportunity, and of course we are responsible that for on our own, to take it up and make it work again. And especially in the luxury industry, of course, they were already on the good side of hotel and catering, but especially in the let's say, the lower class hospitality and catering industry, there's a lot to gain on about the profile of our industry. And I think if the companies are making a wise decision indeed on organization, on finding business opportunities which are not as typical as they should be, this is the era for change now, and we can really make a step ahead. And also when it comes to sustainability, it is not only being on your greenhouse effect or on your CO2, all those kind of things. It's also on how you will get back into your local community and start doing things differently. So at the end, I think it has been a changer in the industry, but it will be, let's say, revitalizing our industry.
Thank you, Stefan. I'm conscious of time. We're coming to the end of our hour. I think it's going to carry on for another hour quite easily. So thank you to our guest today. Thank you for your honesty and candor. It's been very helpful. Thank you. I'm going to pass on to Michael just to say a few words as well, because I'm sure he's got a few things to say. But one thing I would say, because we know there's so much knowledge to share, we'll be hosting these sessions every week. So please do come and join us. Michael, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Well thank you, gentlemen from EHMA for joining us. It's I think been very enlightening, and I although we went through the words of suffering and misery, I feel that last question, Jill, sort of there was hope shining through there somehow, that we will get through this, and we're such a strong industry. Amazing how when you think in all of our countries how hospitality has supported the people of your countries by feeding them and supporting them at cost to themselves and no cost to to the governments. And I think the strength hopefully will shine through, and we will be back with a bang, as long as we look after all our people. That's the important thing. Look after the people, be kind to the people who work for you and come stay with you. I think that's the key to it, that we can come back very strong again. Hope.
Thank you, Michael. It's obviously going to, I mean, it's fascinating how many actually comparisons there are, very close comparisons of the UK and what you're saying. So it's obviously going to be quite a challenging period out, but thank you again for today. And I look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.